Hi everyone, this is Paul here for the Magdalene Centre. Today I'm doing an astrology report for the week commencing the 1st of May, about some of the key aspects and transits taking place this week and giving an overview of what it all means. Before I do that, I just want to clarify, as I always do, that the astrology doesn't control our lives. It gives us a framework to help us understand what is unfolding around us, what kind of lessons are there for us to be learning at this time, and from there it's up to us to take responsibility for applying what we know and making sure that the actions that we take are guided by wisdom and not just blind impulse. Now, in terms of the aspects this week, I'll be beginning with the moon's transit as usual. So we start with the moon in Pisces. So initially there may be a feeling of seeking that spiritual connection or pursuing a sense of oneness and cultivating more compassion with their own lives. But on Wednesday itself, the moon will enter Aries, and this will be a time where you may feel that some desire to just get up and go, to make things happen, and to kind of initiate new projects if that's what we're in the mood to do. On Friday, the moon will enter Taurus, so this will be a time we may feel more of a desire to kind of slow down, to connect with the earth, and to take things on a more step-by-step basis, so kind of engage in the process and become more connected with our own bodies. And on Saturday itself, we'll have the new moon in Taurus, which gives us opportunities to set new intentions in this kind of area, whether it be around cultivating more perseverance and steadfastness and commitment towards a goal, where it's about seeking to consciously appreciate what we have already more often and to enjoy the simple pleasure of life. It may also be a time where we seek to let go of kind of stubbornness, possessiveness or laziness, which all kind of shadow sides. It depends on what feels like the right kind of thing to be setting intentions for in our own lives. It's at the end of the day, it's down to free will as to what we choose. There will be a separate video on this because I need to go into a lot more detail into it, but that's enough for now. And then lastly, on Monday, the moon will enter Gemini, so this will be a time where you may feel that desire for mental connection or to work on communication, whether it's speaking or listening ability. And it's also often a time where I may feel like we're in the mood for kind of networking and building a web of connections with other people and gathering information to ourselves relative to the goals that we set, so we can figure out the best plan of approach to deal with the goal. Now, in terms of the other aspects this week, on Wednesday we'll have Mercury square to Saturn, Thursday Mercury square to Pluto, and Friday Mercury will be trine to Jupiter retrograde. So for the first part of the week, Mercury is the key player here. It's all about the rational intellect, it's about thinking, perception, communication, and it's utilising different energies of the other planets to transform this function. So with Mercury square to Saturn, one of the things that this aspect highlights is an opportunity to work on any resistance we may have to developing mental organisation and mental discipline. Because if we want to stay committed to a goal, if we want to dedicate ourselves to projects and that will have a long-term goal, then we have to be prepared to trim away any tendencies towards laziness, or to allow or recognise where we allow ourselves to be distracted or where we procrastinate, and make sure that we address this tendency through cultivating more discipline within our mind and stripping away any superfluous information and focusing our mind only on what is important and what is real, as it were, so making sure that we're only seeking information that is true. With the square to Pluto on Thursday, this gives us a time or an opportunity to transform mental complexes, to transform the obsessive thought patterns that often run like a broken record through our heads, but there's often negative thinking patterns based on old ways of seeing things. It's breaking through these tendencies, so it's allowing them to come into conscious awareness and then letting go of it. So it's the capacity to let go of the old. So it's the transformation of the mind, or the renewal of the mind through the purging of the old. And then, as I mentioned before, we have Mercury will be trine to Jupiter retrograde on Friday. This gives us an opportunity to attune the mind to recognising how the microcosm and macrocosm work together, and it's about moving beyond limited or narrow-minded thinking in order to appreciate a more broad-minded understanding of things. And it's Mercury deals with the specifics, Jupiter does more with the abstracts or the general or the overriding principles. So it's using this aspect gives an opportunity for us to program the intellect to recognise the abstract patterns or the fundamental principles that govern everything and apply them at the concrete level. So apply them in our day-to-day interactions, and where we do have a tendency to be narrow-minded or where we resist information that potentially challenges our current understanding, is having the courage to pause and be willing to embrace new concepts that may be alien at first, but they actually fit into they're an important piece of the truth that if we don't accept and embrace it, then we won't see the whole picture and we'll inevitably make decisions based on incomplete information. If we want to make wise decisions and make wise choices, then we have to be willing to recognise information or accept the validity of information that goes against our personal worldview, if you like, and be willing to accept the fact that we don't actually know as much as we think we do, and be open to information that can help us to see things more holistically. But this is a trine aspect after all, so this is an opportunity to more easily engage in that kind of behaviour or that kind of approach. But because also with it being a trine, it can be such an easy aspect that we completely overlook it or we just waste the opportunity. So it's something that we have to just consciously seek to utilise it, as having that humility to recognise that we don't know everything, as it were. We on Friday itself as well, we also have Lilith is moving into Pisces. She's been in Aquarius for the last 10 months, and this has been kind of a period of, there may have been an exaggerated need to embrace original ideas or to an obsessive focus on the future, if you like. With Lilith in Pisces, this is all about the unseen, if you like, or the intangible realities that underpin everything. And Pisces is the two fishes going in opposite directions. One is looking at the material world, one is looking at the spiritual world, but they're tied together, so neither of them can separate. They're inevitably bound together. So by bringing the two together, we can elevate consciousness. But one of the things we need to be very mindful of with Lilith in Pisces over the next 10 months is if we deny the kind of psychic senses, or if we become emotionally irresponsible, we don't seek to be objective in how we see things, and we don't seek creative outlets to allow that raw inspiration to be channeled, then we can end up seeing the world like looking at it through water. We see things how we think they are, not how they actually are, because water obviously diffracts light, which causes things to appear to be in a different location to where they actually are. So one of the things we do need to be very mindful over the next 10 months with Lilith and Pisces is to maintain an objectivity and to channel the creative energy and that inspirational energy, ideally through service orientation. So channeling that creative energy to help other people, because if we either suppress it or we try and use it for personal gain only, we don't get satisfaction. We're more likely to manifest the negative side of it, because Lilith is a very impersonal force. She's like Saturn and Uranus in that respect. So if we want to utilise Lilith constructively, then we have to have that discipline and that willingness to embrace the energy, but channel it in a way that will it's not just for self use or self gain, it's to help other people at the same time. On Sunday we're going to have Mars opposite Jupiter, so with this aspect, one of the things we need to be mindful of is Jupiter's all about that expansive energy. That's ideally, this expansive energy is utilised to expand our understanding of who we are and our relationship with the cosmos, the world around us, and to expand our mental horizons and the limits of our minds so that we can see things from a broad perspective. We can see how everything's actually interrelated. So seeing things in a us versus them or me versus you mentality is actually very counterproductive in the long run, because what we do to others we do to ourselves, as it were. Mars is all about the actions and desires, so when that expansive energy touches Mars, ideally we need to use it to develop understanding about the desire function and understand the nature of our own willpower and how we exercise it. And with Mars in Gemini, it's all about more mental desires, but with it being in opposition, we need to be very mindful that the expansive energy of Jupiter doesn't instead get channeled into inflating the ego in some respects. Now, it helps that Jupiter's retrograde to kind of counter that, and to ideally this is a time to use the aspect to become more aware of the actions and desires we face and see if they're congruent with who we are and the needs of the true self, or whether we're still pursuing actions and desires based on the ego, which wants to have dominion and wants to be the master. So this is a time where we need to have that discipline necessary to keep the actions and desires in check, enough for us to understand the nature of it more clearly and to bring the actions and desires into alignment with the natural laws that Sagittarius can teach us. And on Monday, Mercury's changing signs. He's been in Aries for the past 3 weeks or so. Now he's moving into Taurus. So this is a time where the intellect may focus more on practical matters or focusing on the senses, if you like. So one of the things we do need to be mindful of is where the intellect becomes trapped by the physical sense, if you like, or where we becomes just focused on pursuing pleasure as opposed to seeking growth, because Taurus can be all about those physical attachments. It can be all about seeking pleasure, and it's important to remember it's okay to enjoy the pleasures of life. We also need to have enough restraint over them that the pursuit of pleasure doesn't become an attachment or an obsession. So it's having enough detachment in the process to appreciate what we have, to enjoy pleasures in life, because we're not here to suffer, as it were, but to make sure that we don't allow the desire function or don't allow the physical senses or the pursuit of pleasure to undermine everything. But Mercury is also in Taurus, can also, if we allow the intellect to slow down to a point, we can achieve that mental state of devotion and contemplation where we reflect on the natural order of things. And if we spend time in nature, this also facilitates the process. So it's making sure that we don't become mentally obsessed with physical sensations and physical pleasures or pursuit of material objectives. Instead, have that mental detachment from it where we have the capacity to enjoy it and to seek organic knowledge and a deep awareness or concentrated focus on knowledge, so we understand at a deep level and not just a surface level, but make sure that we don't become trapped by pursuit and pleasure, if you like. And the last aspect is Venus will be square to Saturn. So this aspect here is about the need to discipline our values, or to utilise the discipline of Saturn to recognise where we need to simplify things and where the values that we pursue at the moment are conditioned by societal influence and where they're based on egoic appetites, if you like, or the pursuit of pleasure. And it's also looking at where do we have a resistance to discipline or resist doing the actions that deep down we know we need to be doing in order to fulfill a worthwhile goal. and this is a time where we need to discipline ourselves, or approach it with discipline and self-control, so that we don't allow the pursuit of pleasure to undermine our efforts. And it's about stripping away superfluous desires, or the things which don't serve us, and instead make sure that we have more lasting values based on truth, and we seek to achieve more simplicity in life. So it's having that moderation in terms of how we approach things. Now, so that's everything for this particular week. There's a lot going on. Most of it is involving Mercury, so the intellect will be a key focus this week in terms of transformation. Some of it will be stressful aspects, some of it will be easier aspects, so it's a mixed bag in that respect. But this is an opportunity for us to transform the conscious mind this week, the rational mind that is always trying to interpret information and trying to get it to fit our current understanding. So this is a week where we need to seek to keep the mind open and avoid being attached to one point of view or another, avoid mental laziness or distraction, and seek to concentrate the mind and bring it into service to the higher self. Because if we can do this, then the mind becomes a valuable ally. It allows us to become discerning as to what information we embrace and what we discard. So using truth as our main objective. Does it resonate with truth, or is this something that isn't actually useful and we need to discard the information, otherwise we end up polluting our current understanding or distorting it. So I hope this is a guide for this week. May it bring you much understanding and much transformation, and may it be a week where the rational mind can be transformed so that it's freed of old ways of seeing things and empties the mind enough so that we can appreciate new information and see things as they are. And may, with the new moon in Taurus, may this be an opportunity to set new beginnings in terms of understanding our own values, cultivating patience and perseverance, developing that ability to enjoy what we have in life without being bogged down in the senses, and to overcome any tendencies towards laziness or procrastination that would undermine our efforts towards achieving worthwhile goals. So may this week bring you much transformation, many blessings. Take care.